Hey everybody, welcome back to the Anyway Whatever podcast. I'm your host, Mike Fisher, and today's guest is filmmaker and photographer Beau Patrick Coulon. It was really cool to sit and talk with Beau. He's one of my favorite people. We've been friends for a long time, and being able to catch up was really awesome. He moved out to New Orleans from Los Angeles some time ago, so it was cool to catch up with Beau. He's got a new book publishing situation going on, and he hired me to do the logo for that. So we've been reconnected a little bit. We talk pretty regular. He's just such a cool guy. And I think people are really going to dig this. If you are listening to this podcast, go ahead and subscribe wherever it is that you get your podcast content. And that stuff, as always, goes a long way. You can always find us on social media at Anyway Whatever Podcast, online at www.anywaywhateverpodcast.com. My personal Instagram is at Maximum Fluoride for my art and design. And on Twitter at AWP_podcast. So great episode today with Beau Patrick. I hope everybody enjoys it. Check it out on the other side of the jump. Hey everybody, welcome back. Today's guest is Beau Patrick Coulon, otherwise known as Beau, otherwise known as Patty. Me and Beau have been friends for about a decade now, and we'll go into the story about how we met. Me and a past guest, Leon Del Muerte, kind of covered a little bit, but I kind of want to hear from Beau's side a little bit of that story. Because he was coming at it from a different angle than the rest of us. What's up, Beau? How are you?
I'm doing well, man. Thanks for having me on here. It's good to see you.
Of course. I like everybody to get their social media shout outs like right up front, in case people don't listen to the end. So where can people find you online?
I guess the best place right now where I'm the most active is Instagram, and you can follow me at Beau Patrick, and that's mostly like photography and film projects, mostly photography these days, but also you can check out at Burn Barrel Press, which is a new imprint project that I'm working on and trying to hype up a little bit. And then aside from that, I have a website, which is just my name, www.beaupatrickcoulon.com.
Excellent. Like right out of the gate, Beau is a photographer and a videographer, primarily. So just recently, he actually hired me to do a logo for his new imprint, Burn Barrel Press. And what kind of stuff are you guys covering with that imprint?
Damn, dude, it's glitching. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, it glitched out. What was the last thing you heard? It happens. What was the last thing you heard me say?
I heard you say that you started an intro that you helped me with the logo.
I'll just do that whole part over again.
Okay.
Recently, Beau hired me to do the logo for his Burn Barrel Press imprint. And so what kind of stuff are you going to cover with that imprint? Is it a book publishing thing? What do you got going on with that?
Yeah, it's a book publishing kind of thing. By the way, thank you so much. Like, you did such a dope job on the logo. It was like,
you're welcome.
Just want to acknowledge that you're one of the illest designers, graphic artists that I know. I was so stoked that you were available to help me with that.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
I'll put up a little. I'll put the logo up so people can see what we're talking about. But
cool.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So the idea with this project, and it's a publishing project essentially. But I, as a photographer, I was working on a couple of different book projects. I always kind of do my own zines and things like that, photo zines in the past. And
Sure.
I also have a background in printmaking. You know, I used to run a print on demand line for a human rights organization, like, I don't know, 15 years ago or something. So I learned about digital printmaking back then, but I also have like this analog printmaking background where, you know, from like you, screen printing, and I used to be really into relief printmaking and stuff like that. And then worked as a bookbinder in the Bay off and on. That was like one of these jobs that I would kind of pick up and put down and pick up and put down. And I've always just sort of been in love, like with records, you know, like with the physical artifact of like having
Sure.
something. And I mean, these days everything's like a download, or like people are just endlessly scrolling at images. But I've always like really loved the idea of books, and I collect books, and especially art books. But a lot of the publishing companies that like put out the art books I like, you know, like these kind of awesome coffee table books and stuff like that, isn't really anything I've had access to in my life. And so I just come from this, like, for better or worse, you know, like this DIY background where it's like, well, if you want to make a book, you have to learn how to become a publisher. So, I mean, that's kind of what happened. I was talking to a couple different small presses in the past few years about putting out a photo book, and they were like, okay, well, here's the deal. You know, if you basically produce the book, you know, we'll pay for the printing, and then we'll give you a percentage of the sales, and then give you a big chunk of books that you can sell to make money. And I was like, oh, dope. Okay, I'll do that. But then, like, now that I'm like really close to, I'm at the point where like, okay, now my book's ready to print. I'm like, why don't I just do that? Because they've not really done anything. They're just talking about, we'll cut a check. So I'm like, thinking, I've learned a lot in this process. I want to kind of invest in the future of this thing, but then also I want it to be sort of like a platform I can offer to other people.
Sure.
And that's like, you know, some of the nuanced aspects of it are more like, and the reason why it's called a burn barrel is because, like, you know, that's where people come around and just throw in whatever and keep warm and bullshit, tell stories, you know, like, and I really just want to kind of hear people telling their own stories, you know, like showing work that is personal to them and from their own experiences, rather than this sort of like, you know, parasitic relationship that a lot of the things that I like to see documented sort of attract, you know what I mean? Like street culture or movements or different scenes and stuff. Like, you know, I've always seen like, oh, here comes some academic from like with this total bizarre outside viewpoint on something, and then suddenly they're putting out a book about this thing that you've you know been living and breathing your whole life, and like that's the only representation or book or movie or documentary or whatever available on that subject, and I just see that like repeated over and over again, and I just like, I think that people do a better job of telling their own stories or showing their own experiences. So that's kind of the, like, I'm hoping that, and with a few of the people that now I'm like kind of workshopping with to put out their books later, like following this, I have a few releases coming out, and then so there's some other people that are gonna also be sharing like photo books and art books that are, you know, kind of these personal experiences and viewpoints you just don't really get to see, you know. So
That's killer, man, because that just goes in line with like with this whole show is like all of us that came up in the DIY scene, where it's like you don't need to wait around for some company to give you permission to do what you want to do. If you want to put out a record, you can do it yourself, and especially now more than ever with the internet. I mean, you can really, really do anything you want in life and not, you know, and then if you do start something that means something and it goes somewhere, you can always upgrade. But why give away the farm in the beginning anyway? You know what I mean? Like, do your own thing. Like, Dischord Records, one of the most, you know, influential and successful record labels in the history of music, like just some kids folding album covers in their bedroom. You know what I mean? It's like, same with Epitaph Records and a lot of those, punk labels that are still around. That's just like, it started as a bunch of kids who just, nobody would put out their records, so they just put out their own, and they photocopied covers and did all that stuff. And so, of course, that's how you're going to run your book publishing company. I love it that you're like, okay, cool. Like, that'll be great if I have somebody publish it. And then halfway through, you're like, well, I'm doing all the work. Like, might as well be mine anyway.
Yeah.
So that's rad. Are you going to focus primarily on photo stuff? Or are you going to do written stuff, art books, like all different types of things? Or do you have any kind of plan at this point?
Yeah, all different types of things. Actually, I think, I don't know, there are some other presses out there that I find inspiring. Not a lot of them are doing things from the art angle, but there's like definitely some good writing and stuff like that. I'm obsessed with autobiographies, so if someone like has a good autobiography, I'd love to put that out. Actually, I have a Bridget as a friend of mine who put out a book called You Have Everything You Need, which is about her and her partner Tim like hiking the Appalachian Trail or the Pacific Coast Trail, and then like going all over Europe, basically living out of a backpack. And she self-published a thing, but we're gonna do a revised edition with like additional art, because she's also a really gifted relief printmaker. So that's one of the projects that hopefully...
I feel like I've heard of that book before. I feel like I'm familiar with that book before.
You probably have friends in common. She's been in the punk scene out in California for a long time. Her and Tim probably booked your band or something in San Diego or in Oakland, or who knows. You probably know Bridget and Tim. But yeah, they that is one thing, because it's like this autobiographical, like... They're punks that I've known from the scene forever, and then they're creating cool content that is about their own experience. And so like I reached out to her and was like, hey, do you want to collaborate on something? And she's like, actually, maybe a second edition of this book. So we're talking about that.
Awesome.
I have 3 photo books that are like slotted and that are kind of at various stages of development. And I think it's just because I'm kind of really immersed in photography these days, and a lot of the artists that I collaborate with are photographers. But I mean, I'm really hoping that it branches out. But
are you doing like, are you having everything manufactured like at a book plant, or are you actually binding books yourself? Like,
yeah, so
is it like a small boutique thing, or is it like,
yeah, so it kind of depends. Like a lot of what we're, and I say we, but it's just like me and a few other people I'm collaborating with. But a lot of the stuff are sort of limited editions. We're not doing like 50,000 copies, so
of course, yeah. Of course.
So those become like, if you're doing like 50,000 copies and you go to some big offset press like overseas somewhere, you can get books made really cheap. But a lot of what we're doing, yes, is going to be I'll be binding it, I'll be cutting it, I'll be doing all the finishing on it, and I'll be working with my studio is actually where I'm at right now, is above a place. I want to give a shout out to Paper Machine, New Orleans, which is like a 5,000 square foot print studio. And so
nice.
I'll be working with them to produce our first books, but hopefully, or not hopefully, I'll be doing all the finishing basically by hand, with the machines that are available and stuff like that. But they'll be printed. It'll mostly be full color stuff that's printed on a digital press, and then you get the paper, it comes out, and you do the collating, and you cut it down to size, and have the binding done or whatever, and any kind of finishing involved in getting the book made. It's all stuff I know how to do. That's the other reason why it was like felt kind of natural to take on this project, because I've worked on all these different aspects of making books for in other studios and other businesses and stuff like that. So I have like this knowledge that I'm frankly just not been using for the last 15 years. So I'm excited to use some of that knowledge in producing this stuff.
Yeah. That sounds rad. Yeah. I love that. I love because I know when you were in LA, Bo moved out to New Orleans about 6 years ago. For a long time, he was in LA, and I know you were like working at Nomad and doing a bunch of other stuff, and you always seem to find a way to put yourself in a position to around people who can help you get done what you want to get done, which is that's how that shit goes, man. That's how we all do business that way, right?
Yeah.
That's how I end up doing a logo for you, and that stuff just all that's how the scene works, is like you get yourself surrounded by people who can all help each other accomplish all of the things that everybody wants to do. And maybe you're screen printing for this guy, and then he's doing something different for a project that you want to be on. And so it's cool that you're above a paper shop and a printing shop that can help you do that. At some point I'm going to do an art book of my work, so maybe we'll have to talk.
Yeah, definitely.
We'll talk about
definitely
that.
Have to holler at me.
I've been
for sure.
threatening for years to do to finally do, and people have been like, dude, you got like 25 years of stuff, and if you I mean, just for your kids' sake, so that long after you're gone, like that stuff still exists somewhere, because like as an artist, like that's what you leave. That's what you leave behind, is all the things that you've made over the course of your career. And so, they're all scattered to the wind at the moment. I would have to sit down and get everything together, and that just seems like a humongous task. But I have to do it at some point. But
yeah.
So,
I mean, that's kind of what. Sorry, that's kind of what.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that, like, got to do it at some point. Like that's just kind of what this point in life right now has been for me, is like, because I do a lot of other things for work. I also work in the film industry. I'm in the union. What up, Local 478? But we've been on hiatus for 5 months. You know what I mean? So all those like got to do it some days have been like these days for me recently. So that's another reason why any of this shit is actually happening right now. Otherwise it'd be, kicked down the field a little bit. But whenever you're ready, though, give me a call, because like I know you got the material. It would be a dream for someone like me, because there'd be no shortage of material.
Yeah, there is no shortage of material. Like a little bit. To tie into like how we know each other a little bit, is that we met. I've told this story with a previous guest, Leon Del Muerte, who me and him were in the band DIS together, and we were on tour across the United States, and we ended up getting booked to play this cabin party in Tikva, Louisiana, in a bayou, which most people, I think, when they think of that, they think of like a little wood shack. It wasn't that. It was like a really nice national, like state park, really nice cabin. Like it was basically like, as nice as any house you'd ever be in. And so all we knew from our side of it was the guy who kind of did all the booking and tour management for our band was our guitar player, Bruce. And he knew some of the people from your side of it, from being in the band Phobia for so long, in that whole anarcho-punk crust grind scene. So we ended up getting booked at this party, and it just kind of became like the legend of the tour. Like what the hell is this? How is this going to be? How is this going to go down playing at a cabin? And there was like this funny story about Bruce is one of the funniest people I've ever known in my entire life. And so being in a band with him was like nonstop laughing. Just that whole band, like what Leon said, is like that band was just an excuse for all of us who were really close friends to to drink beer and play loud music, and like just that was like essentially the entirety of the band's concept. So it was always just, you know, lots of laughs around band practice and stuff. And
that's a great concept.
Bruce's,
you know, like
yeah, I mean, you know, if all you care about is drinking beer and you work for beer, you can't lose. You can't lose. If you get paid in beer, you cannot possibly lose. And so like we were at practice, and Bruce was telling us when he booked the show, like, oh, and he was doing this funny voice. The guy who booked it was this guy named Matt, who I'm still friends with, him and his wife. They're super, super nice people. And so when I say this, he was not making fun of Matt. He was just being funny. And he was like, yeah, man, we can't wait for y'all to get out here to this show in Louisiana. And our friend Skint Dick just can't wait to see you guys play. And we were laughing so hard. We're like, fucking Skint Dick. Like, who the fuck is, like, and he, and we were like, and he, you know, it was just some random name of some random, like, he just made it up to make us laugh. It wasn't a real person. And so like the legend of Skint Dick was kind of like the whole first half of the tour, like, and he ended up becoming kind of a real person in our mind, you know, over the course of the weeks that we were on tour getting out to Louisiana. And so, you know, when I come from the punk scene, but I do not come from the crust punk scene. And when I was like, you know, couch surfing at punk houses and stuff, that wasn't even a thing yet, like crust punks. It was like, you know what I mean? And so this band was, that was our core audience, was the crust scene. And so coming directly out of raising all of my children in a nice middle-class suburban manner, and then jumping straight into this band and then touring the world to the crust punks of what the Western world was a shock to my system.
Of the South in summer.
Least.
You guys had guts.
Well, they'd all done it a million times. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like everybody else in the band, it was like a super group. So all those dudes had toured all over the place. They'd done all that stuff. And so just when we got there, I was like, oh, everybody here has tattoos on their face, like their entire face. Okay, this is fantastic. We'll see how this goes. And then, you know, in the end, as me and Leon said, like every single person to a person was super fucking nice. And I still have a ton of friends that I met there that I'm still friends with online. You and, you know, and Matt and his wife. And so we did manage to find the Skint Dick, and then his name's Hams, and he's like a Portland guy, Portland, Seattle guy. I can't remember where he's at I don't know where he's at the moment, but he was a super nice guy. And then it turned into I had another friend who knew Hams from the skate scene in Phoenix, and then so it ended up turning out that I kind of knew him from two different places. And there was like a whole running joke with my friend in Phoenix about these things called Nebo shoes, where them, when they were growing up, like if you got caught like falling asleep at a party, they would take your shoes and roll them up and stick them under the couch so that when they got done, the toe would point up. And they named him after this guy, James Nebo. And so it ended up being that Skint Dick was the same guy as James Nebo. And so my crust world and my skateboard world, like, crashed into each other in the most bizarre possible way. But yeah, so to shorten up that story, when we got to the venue, this cabin, you know, we hung out, drank beer, you know, we're completely freaked out by the amount of dirty people that were there. And then we played, and then afterwards, everybody was hanging out on on this huge deck. There was like a big like crawfish boil, like everybody's hanging out, and they were showing video up on a screen on this big wall, and there was all this footage of like trains and like train hopping and all this stuff, and I was like just absolutely captivated by the stuff that was up there. And so I just asked Matt, the guy who put the whole thing together, like I was like, who did all of this? Whose footage is this? And he's like, oh, this is, you know, our friend Patty. Like, you should talk to him. I think he's from where you guys are from. And so me and you started talking, and then like kind of instant friends, and we've stayed friends ever since. And I can still remember parts of that footage. Like, I watched it yesterday. It was so it made such an impression on me. Just like parts of you just like sitting in the parts of the train you aren't supposed to be sitting in, like eating a tin of sardines with hot sauce, just shit like that. And it was so cool to me to be exposed to some totally different part of American culture that I didn't even really know existed. And so, yeah, man, that was super cool.
Yeah. Well, that experience from my side was pretty cool too. I mean, that band is so great, and that lineup was so awesome, and it really was just like this super group of rad guys. I didn't know any of y'all before. I mean, I was familiar with Phobia, you know, and that, you know, that catalog and stuff like that, but you know, getting to know you and Bruce and Sean and Leon, and like I'm still friends with each of you to this day. You know, Sean's come to my art shows before, and like I think I did got wedding footage for Bruce, you know what I mean, and you know, I've done you know, kept in touch with Leon and Liz and stuff online, done video stuff. I mean, yeah, so that we ended up doing videos for that band back in LA.
Yeah.
But, that was like kind of a cool, I mean, you talked about earlier, you know, about how maybe it's a generational thing or something, but like finding the things that you need, or like you want to do this, and then suddenly you're involved with some screen printers, or like you are trying to do a book and then suddenly you're, you know, above a print shop or whatever. I mean, I kind of feel like, I mean, you know, I know you, so I know you're kind of like a jackknife of like, you know, you do all these sort of interesting things that don't necessarily, you wouldn't really think fit together, you know what I mean? But it's also interesting just the network, how things kind of line up sometimes. You know, and there are these, you know, I also come from like the punk scene, like that's what got, or to the skate scene, like the skate scene is what got me into punk, you know what I mean? And the punk is what got me into traveling ultimately. And then, and, you know, these crusty people that I met is like how I met you. And, you know, we all kind of have this shared language to a certain extent.
Yeah, you're right, man. It is that. It's just like, it's like this gigantic web of friends and family that all of us have created in this whole country over the last, you know, like 35, 40 years that, you know, people our age, we're still travel that network. And, you know, it's cool to have people on this show from all different parts of that. Cause that's kind of I wasn't sure what this podcast was going to be when I started it. I knew what I wanted it to be. And so the cool thing that has happened is like, it's kind of become that, like, it's like there's like 1 degree of separation from almost every single guest that I've had on this show that I didn't even know. Every single episode, I'm like, oh, you know, so-and-so, or you know, so-and-so. And it's like, it's literally like the 1 degree of punk rock separation for this entire show. And it's, you know, I know for me, you know, it's funny. My parents watch this show, and they love hearing me talk about all the stories of things that I've gotten into in my life thanks to punk rock. Because at the time, they didn't get it like every other parent in the 80s. Like every single TV and show and movie showed punk rockers as criminals. I mean, that was all there was. It was like before there were Boys in the Hood movies. Every single movie or TV show, the punk rockers were the bad guys in the 80s, and so they didn't know what to make of it. And so them getting to see me as an adult talk about how much it's given me as a person, the life that it's given me, and all of the positive, good things that it's given me over the course of my life. I think that it's really cool for them to see it all from like the other side of it, to hear my friends talk and people I've known for a long time, and what we've all been able to turn this weird genre of music, how we've all turned it into like these crazy life experiences and like these cool things. Like my friend Adam, who's on the board of Punk Rock Saves Lives. Like, you know, when we were 13, 14, 15, we didn't know there was going to be something like that actually helps humanity, you know? And it's like, so I appreciate that. And I love that, that I get friends like you out of it. And it's interesting that, you know, that the cabin in that park where we were at was about an hour, 45 minutes on the north side of Lake Pontchartrain from New Orleans. And you are now in New Orleans.
Yeah, that's a coincidence for sure. Yeah. So I mean, first time I came here, I think it was like 94 or something like that. And so my dad's side of the family used to all live around here. And I guess like, you know, I've always kind of identified on some sort of level with the South and with New Orleans in particular. I mean, I used to have a bunch of cousins and aunts and stuff that lived around here. They're mostly moved away. I probably still have some cousins like out in the swamp somewhere, but not that I'm really trying to search them down. But like there's Coulon family cemeteries here and stuff like that. Wow. And that isn't really why I came here though. In the like early mid '90s, I came here to party. You know, it's a party town. Sure. And you know, that's why I came here. I remember I was like in Hollywood in a squat, and my friend Evil, who also went by Hamburger, was a big old Samoan guy. He's since passed away, but he was like one of my good friends, and he was just reviling us with stories of New Orleans because he had come down here for Mardi Gras, and he's like, they sell booze around the clock, you know, and you're just like pass out anywhere, and people just run up to you and show their breasts and start making out with you. Like, he had this really great time. And I'm like 17, 18 going like, yeah, I want to be there right now. Like, why am I not there at this instant? And then I remember my friend, like my best friend at the time, was this punk girl named Spoon, and we both needed to get out of LA because I think we were like getting a little haggard, and we, you know, it was around the holidays, and I kind of like did the like, hey Dad, what's up? You know, he lived in Oklahoma, like, sure would like to come visit you for Christmas. And he's like, oh, well, I'll get, you know, for Christmas, sure, okay, I'll get you a bus ticket. And I'm like, can my friend come? And then he's like, yeah, okay. And I was like, so, and also, can you get it to New Orleans and we'll just stop on the way? And that's basically how I wound up in New Orleans for the first time when I was like, yeah, I think 18, was right after Christmas. I had kind of like conned my dad into getting me and my homegirl a Greyhound ticket down here, you know. And we got here, we didn't know anybody, we didn't have phones, no cell phones, nothing. You just walk in the quarter and you're like, where are the punks? You know what I mean? And then you find a bunch of people drinking on the river and you're like, where do we pass out? And they take you to an abandoned building, and then that's your life. And so ever since then, New Orleans was like this place I could go and live and survive. You know, I got really haggard and left under dark circumstances. Maybe 3 months later, I think I got arrested. Ended up I gotta get the fuck out of here the second I get out of jail, you know, like for drunk in public or some bullshit. And then, but you know, those were like traveling days for me. So it became just a stop on a circuit. And it's funny, you know, over the years, I just always returned here. I lived here off and on throughout the 90s and early 2000s. And actually like moved away, you know, moved back west. And like a little bit before Katrina happened, and you know, when all that whole disaster took place, I was like restarting my life in California, like kind of like trying to change my older ways and trying to settle down a little bit. And you know, it was years went by until I went back to New Orleans for the first time since Katrina and since like becoming sober. And that's when I met you. I actually like rode freight train. My buddy Matt so the whole thing is Matt and Val, who you know, and who got you to play at Tickfaw. The whole reason why there was a bunch of like crusty punks out in the swamps an hour north of New Orleans is because he had just done 10 years in prison, and everyone like, and so his plan was like, when I get out, I'm gonna see all my friends and have a huge party, you know?
Yeah.
And so it became like a reunion. A lot of people had fallen out of touch, and you know, the internet wasn't the all-encompassing thing it is now. So like, you went to Tickfaw and you'd see people you hadn't seen in 5, 6 years, 10 years, and you got to celebrate, you know, your homeboy, like, who's out of prison, who basically grew up in prison. He went in there when he was like 20 and came out, you know, like his whole life changed. He went in there like kind of a wise talking East Coast punk, like, you know, to being kind of like a Southern good old boy, you know what I mean? Like, he came out like a little bit bigger, a little bit rounder, a little bit slower, but still just a really sweet. I actually can't even do the accent. That sounded more like an Okie accent. But yeah, so I hopped a freight train from LA to Louisiana to go to this thing, and I had like, I remember thinking it was the most high tech thing, but I had a little, you know, cell phone camera, or not even a cell phone camera. Cell phones didn't do video at that time really that well, but it was like it was called like a Play Sport or something. It was like the predecessor to, you know, what are those cube camera things?
Oh, right.
GoPro. It was like a cheaper GoPro. I think it cost like $50 or something. But I like got that for, I don't know, a birthday present from someone, and took it on the train and got all these clips of this trip, and then was showing them to some friends, and then, you know, they ended up playing it, like they had a projector and then ended up playing the clips. But that's like
and now we're friends.
And now we're friends. But the way I remember it though is that you guys were supposed to play in New Orleans, but since literally the entire punk scene in New Orleans was in Tickfaw, it somehow, you know, maybe this dude Christian got Matt and Bruce in touch, and so you all moved locations, and then they were like, yeah, this band from LA, and I'm like, they're from LA? I haven't even heard this band before. I'm like, what?
I know. Little did you know, instead of having to hop a train, you could have hopped in the van.
I know. Well, but dude, DIS became like my favorite band after that. I was like, oh my God, they're so good. It was like playing like, you know, this great hardcore, like D-beat, you know, I loved your vocal style. I mean, you know, there were just like, everyone was so good and talented in that band, like, you know, Bruce and Leon's fucking guitars and Sean's drumming. It was like, it was awesome to see. It was a good band. In a cabin that you rent for, you know, like to take your family camping, you know, and it was just like, well, okay, this is awesome. And then and I remember talking to you like afterwards, and I was like, well, shit, we definitely got to link up in LA, you know, I want to come see you guys play at least, if nothing else. And I think that because you guys like those train clips is why I ended up doing the DIS music video at the Boulevard. Yeah.
That's exactly how you got that gig. Is we recorded the record, and we were like, well, we need to make a video, and I was like, well, we just get Bo to do it. And it was like, and everybody was literally like, of course we just get Bo to do it. And so then you brought in Cyril Helmwein, who helped out, who is like, I found out like his dad is like this super famous painter, Gottfried Helmwein, who did like the painting that is on the Scorpions like blackout cover with the guy with the forks in his eyes. That
Yeah.
like his son Cyril is also an amazing artist and photographer. That whole damn family, man. You look at it,
Yeah.
and Cyril's wife is awesome, and like whole family's just totally talented.
It's
and awesome.
obnoxious. It drives me crazy. They're like a living, breathing Wes Anderson film, but like mixed with like the Addams Family or something. But like Mercedes is a brilliant visual artist, and like Cyril's a great photographer.
And just the nicest
Yeah.
dude, super rad dude, and
Totally.
and
All
so
those
yeah,
people.
actually, like and so you did the video for us. I'll probably link the video in the comments for the video on the
Yeah.
YouTube version and actually on the audio version if people want to check it out. So I know you did a bunch of other music videos too. Like I think you did Star Fucking Hipsters, and then you did something for Jason LaRocca's wife's
The Briggs
thing. And you did you did videos for Briggs, which is another one of those things because I interviewed Joey from Briggs, and his episode will be on before this. But and then like didn't realize that they were on Side One Dummy Records, which is owned and operated half by Joe Sib,
who's on
Joe
the
grew
show.
up together, who was on the show. And it's
That was
like
a great
I told you, it's that
episode.
little web. It's that 1 degree
Yeah.
of punk rock separation. So yeah, me and Joey kind of go over that a little bit. But yeah, was that kind of like the time you were doing music videos? Have you done any more of that? And like,
I mean, so I love doing music videos. I'm not a musician. I love music. It's one way that like I can collaborate with bands I like that, not being able to play, you know what I'm saying? Like
that's why I became an artist. Is I started my first band so I'd have a band that could never say no to making art for them, because all I ever wanted to do was make art for bands. So I get exactly where you're coming from.
Yeah, I mean, like it all started like because my friend that I grew up with, kind of a little bit of a controversial character, but Sturgeon from Leftover Crack had this side project that he's doing.
Character.
He's a bit of a controversial character.
A little bit.
I mean, he's an asshole. He's an asshole, but he's like my asshole. Like I've known him since we were both like homeless, smoking crack together, and then the dude was like, "I'm gonna start a band about this," and did that. And then you're just kind of like, I wish I could like do this sometimes when you're talking, but I also just I want you to create and to be happy and to like support what you're doing. You know what I mean?
Sure.
But
just a little side digression. His band Leftover Crack is, if you in the punk scene today, even with the kids who are like teenagers, Leftover Crack is the most patched band anywhere you go. I went to Punk Rock Bowling. 10-1 Leftover Crack patches and shirts on every fucking person, whether they were 60 years old or whether they were 16 years old. That band, I mean, I'm not a super huge ska guy, and so they always kind of fit in that like Operation Ivy, kind of like a Krusty or Ivy. And so that wasn't really ever my thing. But I listen to them now, and they're a good band. I mean, they're a good band. And then it's funny because like I have another friend who, Kristen K. Farrell, whose husband is also.
You gotta have Kristen
Crack.
on this show, and
I know
Brad
I
Logan.
want to for sure, of course, for sure.
Yeah.
And then Brad is mixed into the Rancid group of people, and then I do all the work for Rancid, and then I grew up with Lars, and then it just goes back to that 1 degree of separation thing that we all suffer from. But anyway,
so I owe my start
the music video stuff.
Yeah, I basically so there was this side band called Star Fucking Hipsters, which I think at the time was like kind of his main project, and my homegirl Nico was like the co-singer. And so it was friends. I'm like, oh, this cool project my friends are doing. They're coming on tour. They end their tour in LA. So I already had it like marked on my calendar. Can't wait to see them, but they're like, listen, at the end of our tour, we have an album that's coming out I think on Fat Records or alternative. I think it was Fat Records, and they're like, we have a little money to do a music video. Do you know anyone out there that can do a music video? And or can you help us like line that up? And I was like, sure, absolutely, I'm on it. And I'm making phone calls and I'm doing the thing and I'm like, okay, so you got to get a grip and then you get some lights and then you get a space and then, okay, well, here's the concept. And then halfway through that, I realized, oh, I'm directing this music video, and so I had, I'd always made, I'd always done photography since I was a kid, but not like in a real serious way. But it was like I documented my traveling and shit like that back in the day, and I was pretty familiar with camera stuff, but not that interested in film. I just never was really accessible. But this was around the time that most people's digital cameras were able to get HD, film out of it, and so I was like, well, you can, make something that's movie quality on this digital camera, like it. And so it just seemed like, oh, wow, I can do that now. I know the basics of that. But I actually just kind of put together a crew and got like I basically found people that were more talented than me to do all the technical stuff. And then they finished their tour and we shot it at the Warehouse Nomad where I ended up living later. And it turned out really good, and it got like, 1 million views and kind of like was like this thing. And I was like, oh, wow, like that was fun and easy. People get paid to do this. I should, maybe look into this a little more seriously. And since then I've done like 20 or 25 music videos, some better than others. You know what I mean? Some are like often it's just like, oh, I have a friend's band, they need a music video, and I call like, hey, will you come do this for a favor, or can I give you $50 to do B camera for an hour at a punk show, or like, and just sort of cobble something together. Cyril was one of those guys that like short notice was like, oh, a punk show in Boyle Heights, like that sounds fun, okay, and he shows up, and that's why we were able to have like more than one angle. Like
sure.
At the time I was like, yeah, multicam, it's like a high production. It's just like both of us with DSLRs at the either corner of the show, and but
it turned out good. It was probably I of course being big creative person, when it was initially brought up, I was like, oh, I got a whole concept, I want to do a whole fucking thing. And then it was like, no, we're just gonna do a live filming, and I was like, okay, all right.
Yeah, I mean that's the best like no budget thing, unless because really to do stuff that like anyone you need a music video, get a couple friends to film it on their phones and then edit the footage together. Like just
nowadays,
yeah, it's like anyone can do it, but also like a good concept doesn't have to have a lot of gear either. You know what I mean? But I think like. It's always, for me, it's always about like doing the best job possible with the resources available. And so sometimes it's like, here's the high concept and here's the reality. And then you have to kind of marry the two, you know what I mean? So I've done a bunch of those. And then there's a couple that have been like, here's a high concept. And, like we're on an indie label that's going to give you $5,000. And then rather than pay myself, I just put all that money into the production or something, and sure. And end up with something that I like to look at, And I think like one of the best experiences I had, I mean, I've had so many good experiences doing music videos, but I got to do this video for The Coup that was on Anti, which is like a subsidiary of Epitaph. And so I got to meet Boots Riley, who was like this like hip hop, like Bay Area hip hop legend, who later became a film director himself. He did Sorry to Bother You, which came out like a couple of years ago. And if you haven't seen it, it's really bizarre, totally worth watching. He's like he's like a whole different breed of like radical artist, and really appreciate him. But like I've like that video now, because it is called The Guillotine, and it's like it gets played now at protests and things. Like it became like a thing. Like that video turns up like every couple of years when there's like some kind of like gnarly shit happening in the world. Like people, like I go like, wow, there's been another 100,000 views on that video because everyone's like, you know, shouting for guillotines and stuff, you know. So it's interesting, you know, working on these projects. You never really know where they're gonna wind up, or if they're gonna end up in a dark hole, a black hole, or if anyone's gonna be watching it like 5 years later or whatever.
God, that's like all the art we make, right? You never know. You never know where you put these things out into the world, and they take on a life of their own that doesn't have anything to do with you, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you ever think about trying to direct film at all?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's been my main day job here in New Orleans. So I've been working mostly in the art department, doing a little bit of this and a little bit of that. You have some experience in it, I think, right? Yep. Set dressing and props and stuff like that.
Yeah, and it did just before, then the year before the pandemic, I had started doing like graphic design stuff for props. I had stuff in that movie Palm Springs that was just out.
I just watched that. That's hilarious.
Yeah, the 12-pack beer boxes for the beer that he's constantly drinking. I designed those boxes. It's funny because all of the stuff that I had in it ended up being so far away or so small you can't really see it. Like there's a shot of the girl at a gas pump, and like the pump toppers I designed around that beer.
Yeah.
And then like the 12-pack boxes like show up twice, and both times like the logo side isn't facing the camera.
People will never know the amount of like detail and thought and work that goes into things that they will never see. You know, there'll be production meetings about like, should this be 6 inches over that way, or you know, and no one ever sees it. But you know, I guess it all translates, and I think people know when it's a quality film or not, you know, and those things all kind of add up. But
yeah, I ended up really liking the movie. I thought it was an interesting, intentional twist on Groundhog's Day.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they even kind of referenced that movie in Palm Springs.
That is so funny. I just watched that the night before last. Didn't even know that you worked on it. Yeah. That's great.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You bet. I actually have one of the Akupara beer cans up on the shelf behind me. From the production. It's funny because they're full of water. There's this company in Burbank that you can get your own water canned for
cool.
like next to nothing. So they just got like a pallet of this fake beer as water. So it's just like, you know, it's for like this company like kind of caters to like doomsday preppers, like people who want to can water to put in their fallout shelter or whatever.
I'm a big fan of canned water. It makes so much more sense. Like the plastic is ridiculous. It's the worst. And it's, you know, like the canned mineral waters like are really onto something, but I'm surprised that just the canned, you know, like your Aquafina, your whatever. Like there's that one brand, Liquid Death, which maybe you know about, like Will Carsola like designed this stuff on it. And I remember, dude, friends of mine were like clowning on it when it came out. Like, oh, that's so cheesy. Like they're using metal to like sell expensive water. Like, pfft. I'm like, no, that's a great business model. It's like keeps plastic out of the landfill. You drink water. Cans make way more sense. Might as well have some dope graphics on it. You know, like, but not a lot of people. Yeah, you can't. There was a while there, like boxed water was kind of seemed like it was going to be a thing, but I don't really even see that in most of the stores. Yeah, no, totally.
So yeah, but that's awesome that we got totally digressed. Yeah, we went right into art department and then into water.
So wait. Well, no, art department. Sorry. Okay. Yes.
Well, I was asking if you were doing any directing of stuff.
Right. So I work, so my like kind of day hustle has been working in film. You know, I do a lot of camera department stuff too, but usually on smaller like documentary stuff. I'll be camera operator, or sometimes I do you know, BTS, like the background, you know, the behind the scenes video footage, featurette stuff, or
all the B-roll stuff and behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah, I do some of that, and then also work as unit production stills. So these are the kind of like easier to get for me, like camera department jobs that like, because I'm not in the union for camera department, I'm in the union for art department, which is like my health care and
Sure.
pension and all that kind of stuff. But
That's where my healthcare comes from, is the entertainment union, the IATSE. So I understand it.
But it's great. No, but I actually want to work and I want to direct and create and produce more narrative film projects. It's one of those one of these days things. So, let me get back to you. See how long this shutdown is? Like towards the end of it, I might have like a trilogy.
I do totally. Yeah, I know, because obviously people who listen know my wife is in the hair department in Hollywood films, and I understand that there are like New Orleans has their own union for everything, and New York like has their own union for everything, and then does Georgia have its own union, or is that part of just like the East Coast? I know that there's like mostly all of the union stuff is Hollywood, and then there's like little pods, because like New Orleans has to have productions fucking year round, right? I mean, it's New Orleans.
Yeah, things were really booming here right before the shutdown and everything happened. And now it's starting. I think there's like maybe two or three things happening right now, but there was like over a dozen major productions in New Orleans, which is a pretty small, like demographically, like our population, I think of New Orleans proper is like 250,000 people. If you include like all the surrounding like greater metropolitan area, it's like around maybe 2 million or something. But there's it's like one of the main industries considering how many people we got. Oil refinery jobs and working on the boats and stuff like that, and everything else is service industry. So the film here is huge. They had a bunch of productions because aside from hurricanes, like we have pretty good weather year round. I mean, there's rain and there's an occasional hurricane. And for a while there, it would slow down really bad in the summer between, during hurricane season. But the last couple of years, like people filmed all summer.
So stuff's been going like year round.
Yeah, it's been going year round right now.
It's been crazy, out of control. With like all the streaming services, Netflix and Hulu and Amazon and all them, like production, there's so many shows and movies in production in the United States between all of those new networks. It's insane. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, the demand's higher than it's ever been as far as I know. I mean, the amount of that stuff that I'm personally consuming is through the roof. For better or worse, like I've watched the entire internet in the last 5 months. Like there's not, I'm, not really joking. Like I've watched so many movies, and because the amount of time I have for it is, I've always been a film buff. Like I've always at least watched a movie or two every week. But now it's like every night I'm watching something, maybe 2 movies. And
binging some series, binging. We just got done binging Orange is the New Black. Like I watched the first 5 seasons and didn't watch the last 2, and then Christy hadn't seen any of them, so we just went all the way through that one, which I'm glad is finally over because the last 2 seasons weren't great.
Yeah, I stopped watching it the last 2 seasons. It kind of reached a point where I was like, oh yeah, I'll get to that.
It's like they had told the story that needed to be told, and so it was just
Well, the book's like 300 pages.
Fantastic movie, TV series. I got no complaints about it. It's just maybe a season and a half longer than it needed to be.
Yeah, it was definitely had some great characters and awesome acting. Love Laverne Cox. She's awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I forgot what I was gonna say, but yeah, that's the way to do it, though. I love to binge out.
It's just crazy.
Just
the amount of stuff to stream is just crazy, and binging stuff is the way to go.
Oh, yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Damn it. I don't even know if this is worth remarking on, but so for New Orleans specifically with the film ministry, what the reason why we've been staying really busy is because we have this like incentive package, like tax credits, and they're specifically for like tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. So sort of the smaller to medium size indie and streaming platform films and TV shows are what really get the most bang for their buck in New Orleans. So that's like mostly what we've been getting. Every once in a while we'll get one of these huge mega like, you know, franchise type action movies, but mostly, I mean, I don't even know where they make those, like Vancouver or something, you know, like I'm sure they go wherever they get the best tax deal.
Dude, like
it's
Marvel bought one of these big, huge like warehouses in Chatsworth, like because once the porn industry stopped being about DVDs and streaming, the entire porn industry out here in the West Valley, it completely dried up. So there's all these massive warehouses out here, and so Marvel like bought this huge warehouse out here, and they film a lot of that Marvel stuff out here, and even to the point where at one point they rented an empty lot at the corner of Roscoe and Canoga, and built this massive outdoor green screen out of shipping containers. It was insane. And then like they filmed some big Marvel thing like on this outdoor green screen thing. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I was like, whoa.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder about like the way things have changed. Like everything used to be made in Hollywood and New York, you know, and I guess every once in a while you get something made in Toronto or Vancouver or something. But, you know, now it's like they have, you know, shows in Picayune, Mississippi, you know, or you know, and like Atlanta is probably the third biggest, you know, like they have Tyler Perry built the biggest film studio that's ever been made, you know, out there so he can keep cranking out really mediocre movies to an underserved demographic, you know what I mean? But
for sure.
Yeah.
A lot of it's
like,
coming back to LA in the last like 5 years. It's blowing up huge here again. And companies like Netflix are just buying up these big places and turning them into old TV studios into new high-tech studios. I can't remember. There's one that's like right over by the Paramount Studios. It was called like Television Studios or something. And like they just bought that building in the last like month and are turning it into like media studios, you know, because nothing's, you know, it's not really television now. It's like, you know, and so yeah, like Hollywood's like, have you been back much in the last 6 years? Because if you went to Hollywood, you'd probably be very surprised.
Yeah, no, I mean, I you know, I'm from Hollywood more than I'm from anywhere, you know, and I go there at least a few times every year. Last time I was there was in April, was like right before this, or no, it was in March.
Is your mom still here?
Yeah, she lives in Burbank.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, my mom's out there, and then I got 2 sisters and 2 brothers that all live in somewhere around LA, and you know, so and then also lots of friends and community and stuff, and there's for some reason I do more like exhibitions in LA than anywhere else. I mean, that like people, I don't know if it's just like people have money to buy art there and they don't really hear, or the people that buy art here in New Orleans are, you know, a different kind of public, like they don't want the kind of stuff that I'm making, you know. I think here it's like they want like New Orleans centered, you know, like Blue Dog, or here's a landscape, a gaudy oil painting of an old New Orleans building falling down. Like people are really into like that New Orleans stuff about New Orleans here, and that isn't really what I do so much. Although, and I, you know, and the galleries and stuff are all in the quarter, and I think they're mostly actually trying to sell to people that are visiting here. You know, like people.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
Buy a piece in New Orleans and take it back home with them to Houston or Albuquerque or whatever, and you know, so there are these like little like really cool little galleries, and we have like a art walk type thing, but it's where and there's like DIY spaces, and like the local print shop will have community based art shows, but it's like you can buy a screen printed poster your buddy made for $20. It's not the same as like, oh, I'm going to do a solo show, and if I sell out, that'll finance my career for the next year. I don't really see that here so much. But then again, it might be just for other people. But in LA, there are like cool galleries, and there are curators, and there's like a lot of spaces and resources that I've been like super lucky somehow to like have been included in, group shows and sure. So the last few times I've been to LA, like I was out there twice or 3 times this year, and like 4 or 5 times last year. But yeah, every time I go to Hollywood, I'm tripping. It's completely changed. It's like it's not the same. Like Hollywood, when I was growing up there, when I moved back in with my mom, was just a pit of, it was a scumbag central. Like you wouldn't walk down Hollywood Boulevard at night. Like that was
even when I moved here in '95, and even up until probably 2005, it was still like that. It was still shady, and people who listen to this show are aware that I had an art studio in East Hollywood for a number of years, and that's like the last shady spot. Everything between downtown and like West Hollywood now has just been like completely, it's like it's been turned into Manhattan, right?
Yeah.
It's like all been like turned into one big block from West Hollywood, like from Robertson all the way to the center of downtown, down Sunset and Hollywood Boulevard, just one big, except for the little pocket of East Hollywood.
Yeah, I love that little pocket too. It's Disneyfied. The same thing's happening in every city. I think anyone can relate to it because it's happening. It's either happened or happening pretty much everywhere. But yeah, it all went down there, I think, in the aughts in a big way. They opened up the subway, and then they did that whole thing on Hollywood and Highland.
That was it.
That was it. It was the
Hollywood and Highland thing was it for sure.
Yeah.
But to be fair, I used that subway to get from North Hollywood to go to shows at the Knitting Factory, which was just off of Hollywood and Highland. And it was amazing. Like the Knitting Factory was probably my favorite LA venue ever that wasn't like a straight up punk club like the Boulevard or something.
Did you ever go to Las Palmas Theater?
No.
Oh, okay.
It may have been gone before I was, because you got to remember, like I spent between 95 and 2005, 2008, like raising kids and being a suburban dad. So I didn't get out to a lot of shows. And if I did, it was almost always going to be like a death metal show at the Whiskey or the Roxy. Like I didn't go to any like small punk clubs until after I got divorced and my kids were grown, and I joined the LA crust grind death metal scene. And then it was like, oh wow, we're gonna go see Saviors in a basement of a bakery in Glendale, and it's gonna be 140 degrees, and it's gonna smell like yeast bread, but it's gonna be like the most fun I've ever had in my entire life.
Yeah, the Knitting Factory was dope. That was a great era for live shows. Saw so many. They'd have a good show every weekend, pretty much guaranteed.
Yeah, and with the 3 rooms, it was either gonna be a small, medium, or big.
Yeah, that place was great. I think that like, I don't know, when I was like a teenager and like like a little dirty street punk hanging out in Hollywood, shows weren't really on my radar that much unless they were like there weren't a lot of venues, and then
you were in when that weird LAPD had everything shut down era.
Yeah, everything was shut down. But I was also just more interested. I'd rather listen to something on a crack box while drinking 40s in an alley or something than I was like trying to go into some show or be a part of some scene. Like they had big shows though, like the Palladium back in the day before it got remodeled was like kind of a dump. It smelled like piss. Would see like Fear and the Circle Jerks and like see people get stabbed in the middle of a show, or it's just like a different,
totally different
era.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't even know like a single venue that I would go to in Hollywood. Like like mainly when I would go back there, I love ArcLight. I always will. Like the Dome, Cinerama.
Sure.
Yeah, it's my favorite theater in the country, and so I'll always make a point. I usually do like a little pilgrimage there and see a film if there's something good playing, and then that's like. That's
Between
it.
that and the Vista, I like.
Yeah,
I love the
great.
Vista too. The Vista's amazing. And like one of those another weird digression is that after living in Echo Park for a while and going to movies at the Vista, at one point I was standing there looking at the marquee and I was like, "This is the cover for that Suicidal Tendencies record, Lights, Camera, Revolution." They like shot that on the marquee of the Vista, and I was like. And I went and looked at the record and I was like, yeah, that's where they shot it.
Oh, that's wild. Yeah, I didn't know. I didn't even realize that. I've seen a lot of good films there. Didn't that got like remodeled and redone like 10 years ago or something? Didn't like Quentin Tarantino or someone have like a hand
that's the new. That was was that
the
New Beverly? Yeah, he was invested in the New Beverly. And then when they were about to go out of business, he like snatched it up, which was the best thing that ever happened to movie theaters in LA, because now he can show whatever he wants. He only shows things on film. You can always go and see one of his movies on film pretty much anytime you want to, or just some other cool movie that he thinks is cool that you have never seen or heard of. That place is, talk about controversial figures. People either love or hate that dude, and I'm like a mega super huge fan. And so I think it's awesome that he did that, and he like keeps it open, because essentially he can do that for the rest of his life if that's the only thing he does.
Yeah, the New Beverly is dope. They always had good programming for sure. I knew it was one of those like kind of art house theaters. The Vista, like they'll play like the big whatever blockbuster that just came out, but they'll also kind of play the, maybe the more artful choice or something.
Sure.
Or,
I've seen so many different types of movies there, from major things to like more like smaller stuff. I think the one that stands out for sure though is Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, when they made the American version, or the American version of that. I went and saw that there, and that was super. I love that movie. I know people are like, no, only the Swedish version matters, and I'm like, nope, the Hollywood one.
They're both
really
good.
They're
both good. Speaking of Tarantino, like that was probably one of the best things I ever saw at the Vista. Was I went opening night when Grindhouse came out, and it was the double feature. Yeah. And that was like going to a live, punk show. Like people were like reacting and doing all the stuff. And the crowd had an energy, and I was like, wow, movies aren't usually like this. Mm-hmm. That was actually a pretty great movie experience. Now that you remind me of it.
Yeah, I'm like, ever since I saw Reservoir Dogs, like on DVD or video. It may have been on VHS when it was like first in circulation. I was like, this is really, really good. And then I forgot completely about whoever it was who made it. And then when Pulp Fiction came out, I remember seeing the commercial, and I was like, Bruce Willis, John Travolta, don't care. And don't care at all. And then I was at the movie theater to see Shawshank Redemption, and it was sold out. And so we were like, oh, I guess we should just go see this Pulp Fiction movie. And I was like, I seem to remember liking that Quentin Tarantino guy's movies. And then at the end of it, I was like, I think that's the greatest movie that's ever been made by humans. And so ever since then, I am always at every one of his movies, like opening day. Every single one of his movies I've seen on opening day since then. So, yeah.
They're always an experience. You know what I mean? Like there's.
Yep.
Yeah, I saw Pulp Fiction at Mann's Chinese Theater with Justine Tillman, an old friend, rest in peace. But that movie was definitely mind blowing. I mean, at the time, I can remember, you know what I mean, being a teenager and just being like,
Yeah.
holy shit, what did I just watch? You know?
Well, it was like a national news story that like people were
Yeah.
like passing out during the fucking the adrenaline
Yeah.
needle scene, and like, you know, it was like crazy sensation. I can't think of too many other movies that created that kind of drama where it needed to
Yeah.
be a news story, you know. So I know, you know, I have my cheat sheet, and we covered
Yeah.
pretty much all the major stuff. Was there anything that we didn't cover that you wanted to touch base on?
Shit, man. I
mean,
I could chew the fat with you for another hour, but like,
Dude,
you know,
totally.
I'm sure we've.
Totally.
Oh man, like people. I hope they know. We should have made the announcement at the beginning, because you know about Marco Polo, like, you know, these video messages people do that you can watch on 2x speed. So it's like,
Not
oh great, I
familiar.
got a message from someone, and I don't even have to listen. I can do this in half the time. YouTube has the same thing. People can speed you up. You're like, oh, this part's dragging a little bit. You put it on like 2x speed or something.
I didn't know that about either of
Yeah.
those things.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably a terrible thing that'll, you know, leave us all dehumanized. But hey, it's convenient.
Oh, dude, what advancement meant for the better hasn't left us all slightly more dehumanized in the last 20 years. Oh God, the internet was supposed to make us all smarter because we all have access to every single piece of information ever known to mankind, and we use it to watch cat videos.
And that's like one of the more noble things you can use it for. You know what I mean? Like,
Who knew
You know,
that would be the case?
spreading GoFundMe's for like people that need, you know, life affirming surgery or cat videos. Like, that's it. Everything else is kind of like, you know, a little bit degrading. No,
It's gonna be somehow it's gonna be twisted into some other version of what somebody's trying to tell you it is. It's insanity right now, especially with everybody being in lockdown and people just have way too much time to spend on the internet, and they go down
Yeah.
those weird rabbit holes. It's weird
Yeah.
watching It's weird watching America right now, with everything that's going on.
Yeah.
A little thing real quick that you had
Uh-huh.
mentioned is you'd mentioned meditation, and
Oh yeah.
do you do TM? I have talked about on the show before. I found out about like Buddhism and meditation and stuff through the Beastie Boys, and was a big part of my life for a long time. And I go in and out of practice. I'm about to start going back into meditation practice, and I guess I do some kind of form of TM. And so, do you have a particular type of practice that you do, or are you regular with it, or?
I don't do TM so much. I'm not that familiar with it, but yeah, I always thought that was cool. Like, you know, I remember reading when you wrote that story about, you know, it was when Ad Rock died, right?
MCA, yeah.
Oh no, when MCA died. Sorry, no, yeah, brain fart. But I remember you talking about how that your love for the Beastie Boys and how, you know, basically MCA had kind of turned you on via like music and his work and stuff to meditation, and how that had been like so life-changing for you. And I always just thought that was really cool, because it was because meditation has been like a really, you know, beneficial thing in my life too. And especially like now during everything that's happening, you know, a lot of the stuff that I've learned through, I mean, I guess I've like just kind of been low-key practicing secular Buddhism for, you know, the better part of the last 6 years, and it comes and goes, and sometimes I'm like sitting every
Sure.
day, and other times I'm lucky if I sit twice a week or whatever. But you know, I don't really follow just one tradition.
Sure, that's how I was too. That's how I've
Yeah.
always been with it.
But I mean, I mean, basically, I'm into just sort of the core, you know, the like real basic stuff, like the heart practices, you know, like loving kindness and compassion and equanimity and forgiveness and
Sure.
you know, appreciative joy and all that kind of stuff. Like it's kind of like that, doing the opposite thing as to what, you know, like my impulses are, you know what I mean? Like, and it's just, yeah, sometimes it's like an efforting thing where like, okay, I'm like feeling like really pissed off and resentful. I'm going to practice some appreciation or something. But mostly it's just like, at this point, a reaction I have to things that's like a healthier reaction that I've kind of learned through sitting and being uncomfortable. And like right now, it's like super uncomfortable, like everything that's going on. I mean, no matter what your political leanings are, like people are struggling, you know? And yeah, I think it's like worth noting that this is a resource that's out there that's helpful and stuff like that, or has been helpful for me, you know?
Yeah, I think, you know, to touch a little bit on that whole thing of like how now it has kind of become like your normal reaction is to do the opposite. That's kind of literally the whole point of Buddhism, and the reason why it's called Buddhist practice is that the more you practice something, the more it becomes part of just how you live your life. And that's literally means that you're getting out of it what you're supposed to be getting out of it, Bo. Yeah. Which is awesome. Yeah.
Well, I mean, like, it's weird. We're all isolated and, you know, to one degree or another, you know, like kind of like at home, laying low, maybe we're unemployed, or maybe, you know, we have to, if we go out in public, we got to be masked up or whatever. But we're all like also very connected, like through technology, and we're all kind of experiencing more or less the same thing. Like it's a really interesting time to be alive, and it's full of a lot of different paradoxes. But
to say the least.
Yeah, to say the least. But it's been very helpful in recent months, you know, to like have some kind of practice. But yeah.
For sure, that's awesome, man. I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that you are getting some peace out of that. And it's funny because in that even, you know, the connected web we talked about before is Leon's brother, Jake. Shout out Jake Labatz, who's an amazing singer and actor. His main thing is he does like online meditation practice with people with like in Zoom now. He used to do it in real life, but I think he's in New Orleans now, actually, as a matter of fact. And the two of you would be just like that if you ever hung out. He's a champ.
Yeah. I've heard that over the years. Over the years, people have been like, do you know my friend Jake? Or like, and I actually heard that before I knew that was Leon's brother. Where it's like, oh, you'd like this guy Jake, you know what I mean? He's into some of the stuff you're into, but I've listened to his music and stuff online. And super talented dude, but we've never actually met.
Yeah, he's super, super nice dude. But yeah, so he does, and then a guest that I've had on a couple of times, my friend Dan Snow, who is like a post-production guy. His wife also does, in normal times, does guided meditation classes, and now she's doing them online. So, you know, the the punk rock web stays woven in a similar manner, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a pretty natural crossover. I don't know. It's like coming from, I mean, because punk's like, yeah, sure, it's music and it's like self-expression and all that kind of stuff, but it has like ideological subtext that's super deep that I find is kind of parallels with a lot of, Buddhist thought.
I think that's probably why a lot of us were able to buy into it too, is because it's about service, and that's kind of what punk rock is. Like, people think it's like it's like a nihilist thing, and it's really more about being a service to your own community, and pointing out the things that need to be changed when they need to be changed, and so it's really not all that big a difference in the philosophies. One just wants to take a hold of your shirt lapels and shake the shit out of you until you change, and then the other one wants you to sit down and think about why you need to change. but it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah, but it's about change, essentially.
It's about personal growth and responsibility. Sure, totally get it. That's awesome. All right, man, I'm gonna let you go. I'm super stoked that you were able to come on and we were able to kind of talk about a lot of this stuff and kind of reconnect a little bit. And when all of this is over, when you're in LA, you got to let me know so that we can spend some time together. And me and my wife want to do some traveling once all of this is over. New Orleans is always on the short list, so we will hook you up when we are in New Orleans.
Come see us
if we can ever come there again.
Yeah, come stay. My fiance Jordan and I would love to host you. We have a guest loft you could stay in. You know, like we don't really do the gumbo, but I know where to take you. You know, if that's what you want.
That's all I need to hear, man.
All right, thanks for having me on
cool,
here, man.
Man.
It's great to talk to you.
I'll talk to you soon.
All right, bye.
All right, bye.